My daughter-in-law posted a video calling me her live-in maid at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon. By 9 the next morning, every card I paid for had stopped working. I did not live with my son and daughter-in-law. They lived with me. When my son Eric lost his job, I invited him, his wife Brooke, and their daughter to use the upstairs rooms in my house for 6 months. That was 2.5 years ago. During that time, I paid the mortgage, utilities, internet, groceries, and most household repairs. Eric eventually found another job. Brooke worked part-time from home. Neither offered rent. I told myself they were saving. On the Sunday Brooke made the video, I was setting the dining table. Her phone was propped against a fruit bowl, recording what I thought was a message to a friend. She turned the camera toward me. "Our live-in maid," she said. "Good for something." Then she laughed. Eric was sitting at the counter. He added a laughing emoji when she posted the clip. I did not see the video until my niece sent it to me that evening. The clip was 14 seconds long. It showed me carrying plates while Brooke spoke. At the bottom, she had written, "Retirement goals. Move in with your mother-in-law and never touch a dish again." Hundreds of people had viewed it. Some comments called it funny. Others asked whether I knew I was being filmed. I watched the clip 3 times. Then I went downstairs and found Eric and Brooke watching television. "Take the video down," I said. Brooke smiled. "It is a joke." I did not agree to be recorded or mocked. Delete it. "You're being sensitive. Half the internet makes mother-in-law jokes." Eric did not look away from the screen. "Mom, just let it go." "Will you remove it?" Brooke picked up her phone. "Fine. Happy?" "No, but the video is removed." I returned to my room and opened a folder containing the family's expenses. Brooke and Eric were authorized users on 2 of my credit cards. I had added them during Eric's unemployment so they could buy groceries and pay for the children's needs. The cards were never meant for personal shopping, but the statements told a different story. Restaurant meals, clothing, streaming services, a gym membership, a weekend hotel charge I had not noticed. The combined balance was $11,400. I locked both cards through the banking app. Next, I changed the password on the grocery delivery account and removed my payment information from the phone plan. I did not cancel their services. I gave them 30 days to establish their own accounts. At 8:52 Monday morning, Brooke called from a clothing store. "Your card was declined." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I locked it. I need it for groceries." "You are in a clothing store." She hung up. Eric called 6 minutes later. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Separating our finances." "Because of a joke?" "Because the joke showed me how you describe the person financing your life. We can't fix everything overnight. You have 60 days to move." He stopped speaking. "You would throw out your granddaughter?" "I am giving 2 employed adults 60 days to find housing. Your daughter has 2 parents. Do not place your responsibility on her shoulders." That evening, we met at the dining table, the same table from the video. I brought printed statements, a written move-out date, and a simple agreement. They could remain for 60 days without rent if they paid their personal expenses, contributed to groceries, and did not use my image online. If they needed more time, they could request a 30-day extension with a written housing plan and monthly rent. Brooke refused to sign. "You are retaliating." "I am correcting a temporary arrangement, that has lasted 2 years too long. Eric read the statements. We spent $11,000. You did. He looked at Brooke. The hotel charge was not a secret affair. It was a weekend she had taken with friends while telling Eric the trip was paid by a client. Several clothing purchases were for an online resale business that had never become profitable. Their financial problems extended beyond my cards. Brooke had $14,000 in additional debt. Eric had been sending money to a sports betting account. For once, neither could use my generosity to hide the truth from the other. They signed the agreement the next morning. The following weeks were uncomfortable. Brooke cooked separately. Eric avoided me. My granddaughter sensed the tension, so I made sure her routines remained stable. I still read with her, attended her school program, and prepared her breakfast when her parents had early shifts. I was ending exploitation, not affection. Eric sold his motorcycle. Brooke closed the resale business and took additional hours at work. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment 40 minutes away. On moving day, Brooke stood in the empty upstairs hallway. You won, she said. This was never a competition. You got your house back. I always had the house. I am getting my role back. I am your family, not your employee or your bank. She carried the last box outside. For several months, our contact was limited to my granddaughter's visits. Eric slowly began calling again. Brooke did not. Then one evening, a message arrived from her. It contained a link to a new video. My stomach tightened before I opened it. Brooke was standing in her apartment kitchen. She looked directly at the camera. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law let us move into her house. I repaid her by treating her work and money like things I deserved. Then I made a cruel video about her. She gave us 60 days to grow up. I hated her for it. I needed it. The video did not show me. It did not use my name. She had sent it privately and asked permission before posting. I watched it twice. You may post it, I wrote. But do it because it is true, not because you expect forgiveness from strangers. She posted it. The video received fewer views than the Maid joke. That seemed appropriate. Accountability is rarely as entertaining as cruelty. Brooke and I are not best friends. We are building something quieter and more honest. She asks before taking photographs. Eric pays me every month toward the card balance. I use that money for my granddaughter's education account. The repayment took almost 3 years. During that time, Eric and Brooke experienced the ordinary inconveniences my money had hidden from them. They postponed replacing a sofa. They packed lunches instead of ordering food. Brooke wore clothes she already owned to a company event. Eric canceled the sports betting account and attended a support group after admitting the habit was more serious than he had told anyone. I did not monitor them. The monthly payment arrived automatically, and their private budget remained private. When the final transfer cleared, Eric invited me to dinner. He placed a statement beside my plate showing a zero balance. "We paid it," he said. "You did." Brooke took out her phone, then stopped. "May I take a photograph? Just of the statement and our hands. No faces." I agreed. She never posted it. She printed one copy for their refrigerator and another for me. On the back she had written, "The day help became gratitude again." I placed it in the same folder that once held their charges. My granddaughter is old enough now to understand part of what happened. I did not show her the Maid video. Brooke told her about it herself and explained why making someone into a joke without permission is wrong. "Grandma still helped us after we were mean?" she asked. "Grandma loved you," Brooke said, "and she made your parents take care of themselves. Both things were true." That is the version I hope she remembers. Last Thanksgiving, they invited me to their apartment. When I arrived, the table was already set. Brooke pulled out a chair. "You are the guest," she said. After dinner, I offered to help with the dishes. "Only if you want to," she replied. I did. That is the difference people miss. I never hated helping my family. I hated learning that my help had become so invisible they could turn it into a joke. Generosity should not make you smaller in your own home. And when someone calls you a maid while spending your money, you do not need a louder argument. Sometimes the clearest answer is a declined card and a date on the calendar. The move-out date did not solve everything. It simply made the problem impossible to hide beneath my roof. For the first week, my son, David, and his wife, Lauren, behaved as if I would change my mind. They packed nothing. Lauren continued leaving dishes beside the sink and used my car to attend appointments until I removed the spare key from its hook. When the credit cards declined, she called David at work and said I had humiliated her in a store. I heard the conversation because she stood in my kitchen with the speaker on. David asked me to reactivate the card for 24 hours so she could purchase groceries. I opened the refrigerator. It contained vegetables, eggs, meat, milk, and enough food for several days. The declined purchase, I later learned, included decorative pillows and a bottle of perfume. I said no. Lauren told David I was monitoring everything she bought. I corrected her. I was deciding what could be purchased with my account. She remained free to buy anything with her own money. She ended the call and went upstairs. That afternoon, I changed the passwords to every financial account and removed both of them as authorized users. I had added David years earlier for emergencies. The arrangement slowly became convenience, then expectation, then the belief that my cards were household resources. My bank representative reviewed 6 months of charges with me. There were restaurants, clothing, streaming services, fuel, and online purchases I had never seen. The total was more than $14,000. I felt foolish. The representative told me not to confuse trust with stupidity. People who misuse access often depend on the account holder feeling too ashamed to examine what happened. Shame keeps statements closed. I printed every transaction. That evening, I placed the pages on the dining table. David turned pale. He had known about groceries and fuel. He claimed he did not know about the rest. Lauren said many purchases were for the family and that I had never set a limit. I asked whether no limit meant she believed the account contained no boundary. She said family should not keep score. I told her people say that most often when someone else is paying. David asked how much they owed me. It was the first responsible question he had asked since moving into my home. I said we would separate charges I had explicitly approved from charges they made for themselves. The remainder would become a written debt. They would repay it after securing housing, according to an affordable schedule. Lauren laughed. She said I would sue my own son over pillows. I told her the pillows were not the point. Permission was. The next morning, a relative sent me a screenshot from Lauren's social media page. She had posted another video this one filmed from the upstairs landing. In it, she described living with a controlling mother-in-law who used money to demand obedience. She never mentioned that the house, food, utilities, car, and credit card belonged to the woman she mocked. The video had thousands of views. Comments called me abusive, narcissistic, and jealous. Several people urged Lauren to expose me. One asked for my name. I felt physically sick. I had never agreed to have the inside of my home broadcast. The video showed family photographs, the street through a window, and part of an envelope with my surname. I contacted an attorney. She sent Lauren a formal demand to remove every recording made inside my house and to stop publishing identifying information. She also advised me to put the move-out notice in writing and begin a legal process if they remained after the deadline. When the letter arrived, Lauren accused me of threatening a pregnant woman. She was not pregnant. David looked at her in shock. Lauren said she had recently taken a test and had not told him yet. She produced no confirmation, but the possibility changed his face immediately. He turned to me and asked whether I would really make my future grandchild homeless. The timing was so precise that I felt anger rise through me. I said a pregnancy would change their responsibilities, not transfer them to me. The move-out date remained. David slept on the sofa that night. The following day, he asked Lauren to take another test. It was negative. She admitted she had lied because she was afraid. Fear explained the tactic. It did not make it harmless. David finally began packing. They found a one-bedroom apartment 40 minutes away. It was smaller than the home they had rented before losing income, and the landlord required a deposit they did not have. David asked whether I could lend the deposit directly to the landlord. I considered it. Helping them leave protected my household, but I did not want the loan to become another open account. My attorney prepared a simple agreement. I paid the landlord, and David agreed to repay me over 10 months. Lauren signed as well. She called the document insulting. She signed it anyway. On moving day, I hired a locksmith to arrive after the truck left. David returned his key voluntarily. Lauren claimed she had lost hers. The new lock made the question irrelevant. They carried boxes down the stairs. Several contained items purchased with my card. I did not inspect each one or reclaim household goods. I wanted the access to end more than I wanted decorative pillows returned. When the final box was loaded, David stood at the door and asked whether he could hug me. I said yes. Lauren walked to the truck without saying goodbye. The house became silent after they left. At first, the silence felt like accusation. I noticed every place their presence had changed. Marks on the wall, an empty hook where the car key once hung, a dent in the sofa cushion. I wondered whether protecting myself had cost me my son. Then I entered the kitchen the next morning and found it exactly as I had left it. Peace can feel unfamiliar after prolonged entitlement. It may even feel lonely. That does not mean chaos was love. I established new routines. I joined a walking group. I invited a friend for dinner and used the dishes I once saved for special occasions. I cleaned the guest room, repainted it, and turned part of it into a reading space. No one called me a maid. David contacted me once a week. Our conversations were awkward. He apologized for allowing the videos and the spending, but he often added that Lauren had been under stress. I told him an apology, followed by a defense asks the injured person to carry both the harm and the explanation. he stopped adding the defense. Lauren did not remove all the videos. She deleted the ones named in the legal notice, but posted a new account of the conflict without showing my home. The story presented her as a young wife expelled after performing unpaid labor for an ungrateful older woman. Former friends and relatives began responding. One had seen me cooking and cleaning while Lauren filmed. Another knew I had paid their expenses. Screenshots of her earlier jokes about having a live-in maid appeared beneath the new post. The narrative collapsed. Lauren's employer found the videos during a review for a client-facing role. The company did not object to criticism of family. It objected to her filming private interiors, displaying mail, and mocking an older woman while representing herself publicly as a privacy professional. She did not receive the promotion. Lauren blamed me, though I had never contacted the employer. Consequences feel like a tax to people who believe only intentions should count. David began individual counseling. Through it, he recognized that he had used me as a buffer in his marriage. Whenever Lauren wanted something they could not afford, he suggested asking his mother. Whenever household labor created conflict, he allowed it to become my task. He called this keeping the peace. The counselor asked whose peace he had kept. It was not mine. The written debt helped reveal the truth. David made the first 2 payments on time. The third was late. When I asked, he said Lauren had used their rent money for online betting and believed she could replace it with winnings. The pattern had expanded beyond my credit card. I did not lend them rent. I gave David the number of a gambling support service and told him to speak with the landlord before the payment deadline. He did both. The landlord accepted a partial payment and a written plan because David was honest before eviction proceedings began. Lauren denied having a problem. She said the bets were entertainment and David was exaggerating to make her look irresponsible. Their bank records showed hundreds of transactions. They separated. David asked to return to my house. My heart wanted to say yes. The empty guest room, his exhausted face, and every memory of him as a child pressed toward the word. I said no. I offered to pay directly for 2 sessions with a housing counselor and to store 2 boxes for 30 days. I would not reopen my home as the automatic solution to his adult crisis. David did not accuse me of abandoning him. He rented a room from a co-worker and began rebuilding. That refusal may have been more important than the first. Setting a boundary once can be anger. Holding it, when the person is sorry, becomes principle. Lauren entered treatment only after the betting caused her bank account to close. She and David remained apart for 7 months. During that time, she wrote me a letter. She admitted that the Maid video had felt funny because it converted her shame into status. She was living in my home, using my money, and afraid that others would see her as unsuccessful. By portraying me as domestic help, she made herself look powerful. She also admitted that every generous act from me increased her shame, so she devalued the act rather than confronting her dependence. The insight was sharp. It did not erase the cruelty. I replied that I appreciated the truth. I would consider meeting after she completed treatment and removed every remaining reference to me from her public accounts. She did. We met at a counselor's office. Lauren looked nervous and carried no phone into the room. She apologized for filming me, spending from my accounts, lying about pregnancy, and calling household care the work of a maid. Then she listened while I described what it felt like to discover strangers laughing at me inside my own home. She did not interrupt. I told her that future contact would not include financial access or residence. Visits would be scheduled. Photographs and recordings required permission. If she spoke publicly about her recovery, my identity and private life would remain outside the story. She agreed. David and Lauren eventually reconciled, but they did not return to the old structure. They maintained separate personal accounts and one limited household account. Lauren's access to betting sites was blocked through software and banking controls. Both attended counseling. David stopped asking relatives to solve conflicts he feared addressing directly. Their repayments resumed. Each month, a modest amount entered my account. Sometimes it was late by a few days, but they informed me before the date. I did not charge interest. The purpose was accountability, not profit. After a year, Lauren became pregnant for real. This time, the news arrived without leverage. She and David invited me to lunch, showed me the medical image, and asked whether I wanted to be involved as a grandmother. They did not ask for money or housing. I cried with happiness and caution. The baby, Sophie, was born in early spring. I visited the hospital after receiving an invitation. Lauren handed her to me and said she wanted her daughter to grow up, understanding that care is honorable work, never a role used to make another person small. I held Sophie and hoped she meant it. Hope did not require me to remove safeguards. When Lauren returned to work, they asked whether I could provide childcare. I offered one morning every other week. They arranged paid care for the rest. No one suggested that grandmotherhood made my schedule public property. On the first morning, Lauren brought a written list of feeding times and emergency contacts. She asked before placing a small baby monitor in the nursery and showed me exactly how it worked. The monitor was connected only during Sophie's visit and left with Lauren afterward. The contrast with the social media camera was not lost on either of us. At noon, they arrived on time. David asked whether I had enjoyed the morning. I had. That enjoyment mattered because the care had been chosen. Work freely given can be an expression of love. Work assumed becomes evidence that the worker's time is valued less. Lauren found a new job in a smaller company. During the interview, she disclosed the public videos and explained the privacy lessons she had learned. The employer hired her on probation. Over time, she became responsible for training staff about consent before sharing client images online. She asked whether telling her story in training would violate my boundary. I said she could describe her own conduct without identifying me or repeating the humiliating content. She showed me the material before using it. In the presentation, she wrote one sentence. If the person in the story did not consent to becoming content, their privacy is more important than your engagement. That sentence reached more people than the original joke. Our family holidays changed. At the first Thanksgiving, after reconciliation, David asked everyone to choose a task. No one assigned the kitchen to me because I was the older woman who usually handled it. I chose to make dessert. Lauren prepared the main dish. David washed pans. Other guests brought sides. After dinner, I offered to help with dishes. Lauren asked whether I was sure. I said yes. We stood together at the sink. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she said she used to think asking would make help less loving. I told her asking is what keeps help connected to love. She dried a plate and nodded. Sophie grew into a child who asked many questions. At 4, she wanted to know why adults said please in our family before entering rooms. Lauren told her because doors belong to the people behind them. At 6, Sophie helped set the table and asked whether that made her a maid. The room became still. Lauren knelt beside her and said no. Helping with shared work made her part of a household. A maid was a real job deserving respect and pay, not an insult for someone whose labor people ignored. I had never heard a better correction. The final debt payment arrived 3 years after the move-out date. David and Lauren came to my house with a printed statement. The principal for the apartment deposit and unauthorized charges had been paid. I had already decided not to pursue several disputed household expenses, but the amount we agreed was complete. Lauren asked whether I wanted the decorative pillows returned. For a second, I thought she was serious. Then she smiled. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Humor had once been used to humiliate me. Now it could exist inside truth, with no one made smaller. They gave me a new card for my wallet. It was not a bank card. On the front, Lauren had printed, "Her money, her choice." On the back, David added, "Her time too." I kept it behind my credit card. Years later, I needed help after knee surgery. David offered to stay for a week. We discussed the arrangement before I agreed. He would use the guest room, prepare meals, drive me to therapy, and return home each evening after the first 2 nights. Lauren would visit with Sophie on the weekend. No one moved belongings into my closets. No one connected accounts. No one posted photographs. One morning, I woke to the sound of dishes. David stood at the sink washing a pan. He turned and said breakfast would be ready in 10 minutes. I thanked him. He said he finally understood how invisible labor becomes visible again. You notice it when you stop believing it belongs to someone else. During recovery, I accepted help without fearing it would become occupation. Boundaries had not made me isolated. They had made assistance safer to receive. That distinction becomes especially important as people age. Families sometimes imagine that an older person's home, schedule, car, and savings gradually become common property. They call it practicality. The older person feels themselves disappearing through 1,000 convenient assumptions. I refuse to disappear. My estate plan now states that no adult child has a right to reside in my house after my death without paying fair costs and following a written agreement. Financial accounts transfer through named beneficiaries, not through cards left in drawers. Digital devices are protected by instructions that prevent private photographs or messages from becoming family content. David and Lauren know the plan. Neither objected. Lauren once asked whether the rules existed because of her. I said partly, "A painful experience can reveal a weakness in a system. Repair means changing the system as well as the relationship." She accepted that answer. Today, when people see our family together, they might assume the conflict was small, a rude video, some overspending, a temporary housing problem. But dignity is rarely lost in one spectacular act. It is worn away when meals appear without thanks, accounts are used without questions, and jokes teach an audience that one person's work has no value. Restoring dignity also happens through ordinary acts. A doorbell rings, a card remains declined, a task is requested instead of assigned. A camera stays off until everyone agrees. A son returns a key. A daughter-in-law asks whether help is freely offered. Last Sunday, David and Lauren brought Sophie for lunch. We cooked together. Sophie mixed salad dressing. David prepared vegetables. Lauren set the table, and I made soup. When we finished, everyone carried dishes to the kitchen. No one was the maid. We were a family sharing work in a house whose owner had chosen to welcome them. Before leaving, Lauren asked if she could take a photograph of the three of us. She explained where she wanted us to stand and promised the image would remain in a private family album. I looked around the room. Nothing identifying was visible. Everyone was comfortable. I said yes. In the photograph, I stand between my son and his wife. Sophie is in front, holding the little card that says, "Her money, her choice." We are all laughing. The image does not erase the old video. It proves that a camera, like money, access, time, and care, can become part of love when consent comes first. I still help with dishes when I want to, and every person in my family now understands the power contained in those final 4 words. When I want to.